Hello orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at one of my Phalaenopsis Sogovivian. This one is one of the 3 Sogovivians I have in my collection, and this one is the largest one, I would say, in my collection. I have 2 other ones. One of them is a small size, and then the other one is a medium size, and this one is the biggest, the largest, with the most leaves too. So if we go back in time, this would take us to November 2019. That's when I first saw signs of a new spike emerging. At first I thought it was a root, but then I looked closer and realized it was a spike. So it was very, very exciting for me because this is a new orchid and it had just finished its bloom. I didn't expect it to rebloom this quickly, but I guess at that time, because after Halloween I typically keep my house really chilly, meaning I keep the thermostat at about 57 degrees. So I guess it was cool enough, and this orchid had enough energy and nutrient to want to rebloom, to be able to rebloom. So a couple months went by. It was around mid-February 2020 that it started to put out a little bit of buds, and at the same time I noticed that it was also creating 2 branches from this primary spike. And by the way, this spike is thick, it's really thick. It's thicker than the 2 flower spike that it came with when I purchased it. So I didn't know what to expect other than, okay, so if it's gonna bloom, I don't know how many buds it was gonna produce. I carry on with normal orchid care, and that is typically quarter strength fertilizer, and this orchid also receives about quarter cup of water each watering, and that's in winter time. It's usually about 7 to 10 days, so sometimes I will let them dry out for 2 to 3 days until the next watering. So this orchid sometimes receives water every week, but most of the time it's really every other week, depending on what I see inside the media and depending on how much water I think it needs. So end of March 2020 was the first sign of its bloom. It's just as pretty as I remembered. You know, you see all these veins or, streaks on the flower, and it's that pink magenta color, and obviously, Sogovivian is known for its variegated leaves, but when it's in bloom, the flowers are also very pretty. Back to the care, because it's still in its original container, and the mixture, the medium is bark chip and sphagnum moss. A little bit of sphagnum moss. I would say maybe like a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 bark chips to 1 sphagnum moss. So it's somewhat water retentive, so quarter cup of water is typically sufficient to keep it going in winter time for about 10 days, and then I would let it dry out for a couple days, and then so every other week or so I give this orchid another watering. From time to time I do miss this one a little bit, just around the edge of the media, the cup, because I'm not sure if this orchid would need more water because of all the leaves, because this orchid has a lot of leaves and it's creating a main spike with 2 branches. I just don't know if it would need more water, so I kind of did that as as I see, as when it's needed. But overall, I think this orchid did really good. It had 1 bud blast, but it was like toward the very end of it, when the weather was
getting hotter. But other than that, this orchid pretty much bloomed out all its buds. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about like what are some of the things that you should be watching out for, or do or don't do when orchids are in buds. So the first thing, based on my experience, is temperature. Temperature fluctuation is one main reason why orchids may have bud blast. And thankfully, I have central air. I have central control, so I get to set the thermostat to try to maintain the temperature to be constant. But the thing is, sometimes there is, weird weather. All of a sudden, it gets really hot, and then all of a sudden it gets really cold, and then, the house itself sometimes needs to take a little bit of time to adjust, and orchid detects those things. So I have had a couple orchids that are more sensitive, and they had a couple bud blasts due to just drastic weather change. So that the first one is temperature, and then the second one is humidity. With humidity, it's easier if you have a humidifier and you just kind of keep it on the whole time. For me, I only try to use it in the summertime, because in summertime it gets really hot and it gets really dry as well. So, because in summertime, the AC will kick on more, and when it's on, then the air gets really dry. So summertime, I do try to turn on my AC, my humidifier, and humidifier also helps lower the temperature slightly. In wintertime, I try not to do that. So the second thing is humidity, and the third thing is really more about just us orchid owners, growers, moving them around too much. Sometimes you want to take a look or move them around for cleaning, for watering, and sometimes doing that too much can also interfere with the way that they mature their buds or flower spike. For example, even if just the flower spike when it's growing, if you put it back in a different position or in a different location, and spikes are always growing toward the source of the light. So if you don't put them back where they were sitting, the spikes may grow crooked. So that's one thing. But if they're in buds and you move them around too much, they may blast. And then the last one is really about the overall health of an orchid, and that is, for example, if it has a root rot issue, crown rot, stem rot. Those issues are considered stresses for an orchid, and if an orchid is in bud and have one of those issues, those buds typically will blast. So those are the four main reasons why your orchids may have bud blast. And so I try my hardest, my best to not do any of the above and keep this orchid healthy when it was in bud, because I was thinking, gosh, this orchid is producing so many buds, and obviously it's going to take a while for this orchid to bloom out completely in full bloom. So it's going to take a while, So I wanted to make sure that I don't do any of the above, and I am glad that I achieved that. This orchid overall surprised me, like I said earlier in the video, because it had just finished blooming when I purchased it, and in a short time, because of the winter condition, the cool down, it initiated another spike. So it's quite amazing that it just it immediately bloomed right after. Overall, I think it's a cute, charming plant, and I am excited for its next blooming cycle. I haven't repotted this one yet. I'm thinking I will do a repot of this orchid, but I'll keep you posted if I do.
This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!